Going live, going live. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Yeah, hey, there it is. We are officially live for our first quarterly Q&A. Shannon, how you feeling tonight? Excellent, excellent. I want to make sure in the chat, can you guys hear me right now? Is it working? Does everything sound okay, or am I on mute? I'll wait to see if anyone in the chat chimes in one way or another. If not, then Shannon, you're going to do all the answers for us. You're gonna carry the whole thing. Excellent. I know you can handle it. Yeah, so I'm going to keep working on a couple of the little things in the background here. But Shannon, this is our live Q&A. Tell everybody how this happened, how this all came to be. Oh, wait. It says like, oh, so you guys can't hear Shannon. Okay, excellent. Okay, well, give me just a second. Of course, this is going to do this. All right, so we are going to... just going to have to mouth everything. Of course, this is how it's happening. Of course, this is how it's going to go down. This is very, very unfortunate, and I'm not sure exactly how to deal with this right now. Okay, so Shannon is... Yeah, so unfortunately, Shannon is only muted for all of you. And she's sounding great to me. I don't know what is your guys' problem here. Yeah, so to let all of the listeners know, I really had to hack this together tonight. I got some new hardware and I fought that for part of the day today, and now all of this has been an absolute nightmare. Now, let me check this here. Yeah, you can give muting and unmuting a try. That sounds awesome, but I'm pretty sure it's my mess up. I'm pretty sure that's the problem here. Shit. Yeah, that's right. Shannon is just going to have to type in her answers while we're going through this here. I honestly... That's perfect. Excellent. Oh, hey, Shannon, can you try talking now and see if our listeners are able to get that?
Do we get me now? Everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, no, I got to do it. Can everybody see me? Can everybody hear me? Good. Name that movie once you hear it.
Maybe if Dave and Shay are here, maybe they'll be able to tell you.
Jeff would know.
Can you hear Shannon? Hey, Julie says yes.
All right.
You are audible. Excellent.
Yay! Who can name the movie I just quoted? Can everybody see me?
Anybody?
Good.
Anybody?
Woo. Oh, dear.
Excellent.
Where's Jeff?
There's Jeff. Yes, Jeff, we were working for the past hour and a half to try and get this all sorted out, and it's one of the things that you don't know if it's working or not until you hit the start stream button on YouTube, and then it's like, well, hope it fucking works, and it did not work. So, but alas, here we are. So, Shannon, now that people can hear you, I'm going to do some technical stuff on the back, and what I'm going to do is invite any of our Patreon subscribers to join the live chat, and I'm going to send out that link in about 5 or 10 minutes. We're going to get through a few of the questions here, and then anyone who wants to join in to the Zoom call here and wants to join in with us and have a conversation and chat with us while we answer some more questions, you're welcome to join us. But Shannon, let's get some questions. What do you say?
I know. Yeah. So first of all, yeah, it is a movie, Jeff. Okay. Everybody picture Kenneth Branagh with curly hair. Okay.
I don't know who that is.
What is wrong with you?
In shame.
Oh, you should be in shame. He's my favorite director of Shakespeare. Holy shit. Okay. Yes, it's a movie. Anybody figure it out yet? Okay. All right. So, speaking of movies, I should skip to this one. Julie asked us some questions. She asked me, what actor would you like to have dinner with? Which I'm like, you want me to name one? Okay. I don't know if I can name just one. I mean, there's like Kate Blanchett because she's just fascinating, Helen Mirren because she's beautiful and fascinating. They have this incredible history of the movies they've done, but also the kind of people they are. But also like Keanu Reeves because he's one of the nicest guys out there, and I think it'd be really fun to just sit and talk to. Same thing with Ian McKellen and Viggo Mortensen and some of these that just would be utterly fascinating. I mean, to me, I would have like, big, huge table full of people is what I would like to do. But also she asked, what movie's coming out soon do you want to see? And I'm still like, yeah, whole bunch. Things like West Side Story, because it's directed by Spielberg. And Death on the Nile, because Kenneth Branagh is doing Hercule Poirot in that. And I got a kick out of his interpretation of it in Murder on the Orient Express. And in fact, there's a lot of things I really liked about that. I've got now 3 versions of it because I have that one. I have the Albert Finney one that was done back like 80s or whenever that was. And I also have the one with, I just lost his name. What's his name? Who played all the Hercule Poirot runs, on the BBC stuff. And the different versions are utterly fascinating. I don't give a shit about the mustache. I mean, there's a lot of Poirot and Agatha Christie purists that really hate Branagh's mustache, but I cared more about how he played it than anything else. And I found him fascinating. So anyway, I'm curious about how he's going to do with Death on the Nile. But things like the John Wick 4, Matrix 4, yeah, they're Keanu Reeves, but also the Matrix, I wasn't sure if I wanted to see a 4th one because I thought the 3 were complete on their own, and I liked the 3. I know there's going to be people that hate on me for that, but when I saw the preview for it, I was like, wait a second, this looks really fascinating. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, Mission Impossible 7, because I like the Mission Impossibles. I don't like Tom Cruise as a person, but I do like his movies, especially his action movies and all of those. It's just fun seeing what he does. They're going to do another Star Trek movie in 2023, and I'm really curious how they're going to do with that, especially because the actor who played Chekhov had died. And I'm curious how they're going to do it, if they're going to replace him as an actor or if they will have him as dead in the movie. I don't know. It'll be fun to see. But yeah, those are some just off the top of my head that I'm looking forward to. I mean, there's a lot of superhero movies coming out, but I got really bored with them. And I mean, like the Marvel ones, I think the last one I saw was Guardians of the Galaxy. That's
a movie I've seen. It's excellent.
There you go.
I've seen both of them, actually, or two of the 3, I guess it is now. Yeah, no, they're great movies.
Yeah, they are. Sure. But yeah, it's just not, I don't know. I'm just so fucking tired of those. But otherwise, yeah. So those are what I'm looking forward to. Bryce,
Shannon?
Julie wants to know, if you could have any car of your choosing, what would it be and why?
Going with the hard-hitting questions first. I like this. So movies and now cars.
Of course.
Okay, so this is kind of a multi-tiered question. I want to see the exact. It's so broad, Julie. My God, how do we even answer that question? It's like, with you, Shannon, like Julie has a great way of asking these like huge, complex conversation starter questions of like, what actor or actress do you want to have dinner with? Like, well, holy shit, I could take 10 minutes to answer that, right?
Right.
All right. So, money is no object. God, wow, that's like that. There's a couple that fill the possibilities there. So okay, so one of the cars that has absolutely captivated me, And you know how, Shannon, when you talk about movies, you go into details and these actors and actresses and, you know, talk about their renditions. Well, I'm going to go into a couple details here, but, you know, I'll try and be brief. What a car that has absolutely captivated me is, it's called a Lexus LFA, and it is a supercar that is made by a Japanese car maker, which is really, really uncommon. And it has a very specific engine that's a V10 with individual throttle bodies, and the engine note was actually tuned by Yamaha, as in the motorcycle and the piano music instrument maker, in order to have a very unique sound to it. And it sounds like a race car, and it's really, really amazing. Truly a beautiful car, in my opinion. It's very polarizing, but I think time will attest to it being an objectively beautiful car as it continues to age. So that's like a far off crazy dream. I would love something like that. But as far as like driver's cars go, something that's actually reasonable to have, I might not have answered this way, you know, 5 years ago, but honestly, a Miata. It sounds absolutely crazy to say that an old econo shitbox car that's 30 years old is my dream car, but after having one now for a few years, I just adore that little thing, and I love it so much. And in many ways, it's like it's my dream car just because it's attainable and I have it and I get to enjoy it every day. So, you know, kind of polar opposites of the spectrum there. You know, this amazing, crazy, epic supercar that's, you know, $1 million right now, and then my little $5,000 shit box that I just love and just hold so dearly to my heart. Yeah, that's kind of a couple of sides of that question. And you know, without turning this into car talk, I could answer this question the rest of the live stream. But Shannon,
I could do that with movies.
Exactly.
We'll do the movie and car talk. Yeah.
Great question, Julie. Thank you.
She also asked us both, what is our favorite thing about doing the podcast?
Ooh.
I get to talk to Bryce every 2 weeks, which is fun. And because then I could just pin him down since I can't always reach him.
I don't belong in this world.
Harass you so much over that.
I don't belong in social media constant contact world. And Shannon, like, you could ask any of the people that I call friends, Julie included, Tanner, anybody, I
know.
I don't like to be accessed because I don't like to talk to people. It's weird. I don't know. And whatever. I've said anough.
I love to harass you about it just because it's just way too fun to harass you about that. It is a lot of fun. It's fun to talk about all of this shit with somebody else. And that's one of the big things, is to say it out loud and have somebody else to talk to who comes from a somewhat the same experience and somewhat not, but be able to just go into all of that shit of being a Mormon and leaving it and everything else, and to have somebody understand, and also to frankly validate a lot of the feelings and stuff. I mean, this podcast in some ways is turning into therapy for me, but that's a lot of what it is. And I mean, I've met some really fascinating people, and hoping to meet even more, like the ones I've met in person, which are Julie and Jeff and Dave and Shay. And I'm hoping to meet more of you in person, because I just think it would be really fun. I love talking to people. I love hearing people's stories. And it's so fascinating to me being able to reach out this way. And that's one of the values, I think, of podcasting, is being able to reach other people in ways that I couldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. It's sure a hell of a lot cheaper than therapy. I agree with you. Like, as someone who, you know, doesn't really do a lot of outreach or a lot of activism, but still feel the drive to want to do things like that and correct social ills. The outlet that I have found is spreading information in the most efficient way that I have found, that is a reasonable way for me to spread that information. And that is, in some ways, like doing the podcasting scratches my need for a social engagement itch with, you, Shannon, and with Marie and David before that, and with Braden, and as my co-hosts and people who I interact with on a frequent basis, and also like establishing, with listeners. Julie and I met when she was like a Twitter profile that was interacting with all of my posts, right? And now we're really good friends that never would have been possible had I not started this. So just like you, Shannon, I've met a wonderful group and community of people doing podcasting, and those are some of my dearest and closest friends now, and I absolutely love that. And I also just have an insatiable urge to understand things, to research things, and to just dive into the nitty gritty until I feel like I fully comprehend something. And doing this provides a direction for that need, and in many ways kind of a terminality to it as well, because it's like, you ran into this with the main segment last episode, like you can like keep reading and keep researching and then keep writing the script for it, but at some point it's like you gotta go to air. So like in that way there's a pressure to be able to create the information in a way that's concise enough and palatable. And for me it's like it's a drive because I'm interested in finding something out and trying to package it so that people will actually listen. It's just a fun kind of pressure to put that drive into perspective.
Yeah, that is true. Which leads to another question from Will. He asked, what are y'all's perspective on the state of the Exmo community, where it's at now and in 2021 post-COVID, as well as how it has evolved in recent years? What do you think?
That's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You know what? I think I'm going to use a controversial topic as a point to introduce a discussion about the Exmo community, and that is McKenna Denson, right? Shannon, I know that you're somewhat, or at least quite familiar with this issue, but as background for anyone who doesn't know, I assume that everybody watching has some sort of idea. This person, McKenna Denson, went and interviewed her abuser, who was the president of the MTC while she was a missionary there in the 1980s in Provo. And she got him to confess on tape that he had abused multiple missionaries, young teenage missionaries, right? I guess, they would be, 21 or whatever, but you get the point. Pretty fucked up stuff. And he confessed to it right on, concealed hidden tape. And then she published it far and wide, caught national attention. And then as a result of all of this, she kind of became a bit of a celebrity in the community. And as her celebrity status grew, and as she did more talk shows and podcasts and got more popularity and stuff, other information began to emerge. And a lot of this was a result of the church itself launching an attack campaign against her. And it was extremely effective. And the church's attack campaign, coupled with some things that went on in her past that are unknown or controversial or disputed, caused a breaking point within the community. And it resulted in people attacking each other and in many ways revealing a lot of deeply and I don't know, programmed misogynistic tendencies in individuals as well as within the community at large. And the fallout from all of this was quite fascinating to watch it transpire and to see battle lines being drawn over this issue and get everybody talking about the controversy, which then resulted in nobody talking about the fact that she had done so much good for the community, regardless of her past, regardless of any attendance she may have, regardless of what happened in her past to make her who she is and act the way that she does. We were all talking about the du jour controversy instead of the fact that she got a MTC president to confess on tape that he raped women at the missionary training center.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
guy is still an emeritus 70 or whatever and living the good life, and nothing ever happened to him, right? But
Right.
McKenna Denson has been absolutely exiled and is a pariah to the community. It just really shows, in a lot of ways, the priorities, but as well as coupled with McKenna Denson was an accessible villain once she became a villain, whereas this guy, Joseph Bishop, the perpetrator of this abuse, he's an inaccessible villain. The lawsuits went,
Right.
nothing happened, right? The
Yeah.
church was contacted by multiple people in and out of the ex-Mormon community. They did nothing about it. So he's untouchable, whereas McKenna Denson is a human, villain that we were able to access and therefore attack, destroy, belittle, cut down, and, exile from the community. So, to the question, what does the ex-Mo community look like right now? Sadly enough, not that different from the deeply entrenched Mormon community. Because being a community that's identified by something that you are opposed to says absolutely nothing about what you are for. And the ex Mormon community is only just X something. It's similar with like the atheist movement and the many iterations of it. It's like, okay, so you solved the question or you've come to the answer of a simple question. Is there evidence for God existing? Okay, so then what? Same with ex-Mormons, right? Like, you resolved that the church isn't true. Then what? Are you able to scrub away the misogyny? Are you able to scrub
Right.
away the bigoted identity that was programmed into you? And those are some deeper questions. And I think the ex-Mormon community, certain aspects of it are extremely helpful. Certain aspects of it reveal that there's still a lot of growth and healing that needs to happen.
Right. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that.
Long question, sorry, or long answer, sorry.
No, I really don't have anything to add. That one is good. And it also kind of leads into another question from Will, which is what are y'all's opinions on the growing post-Mormon podcast TikTok media ecosystem? And I mean, I mentioned this before when we interviewed Devin Sunday on, is I said that I think it's really good if we can find a creative way to deal with the break from Mormonism. That was Devin Sundays who's creating these graphic novels about it and about his loss of his testimony. It's what's happening with me and I know Bryce when it comes to the podcast. And I think ones like Exmo Lex on TikTok, she's got a fascinating channel and is a very fascinating person to see what all she wants to talk about and what she's gone through herself. And, there's so many others on Instagram that I love following. And I've been screenshotting them and sharing them saying, hey, go follow Post Mormon Parenting, go follow this one, all these different ones. Exmo Candle, who is now also one of our patrons too. Huh. Go figure.
Woot.
Yay. But, go follow these because they're posting things that are really good and really necessary. And yes, it is something that helps all of us that are doing it to heal from the trauma that we've all gone through in this church. And it's also a way for our followers, whether, it's a podcast or whatever, to find ways to heal themselves. It's like what Jeff said in here in the chat. He says, I have used Glassbox and Naked Mormonism episodes as springboards for discussions with my therapist over the last couple of years. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like there's plenty of room for all sorts of approaches, right? Like, 7 million chapel attending Mormons is 7 million potential ex Mormons, right? And
Right.
those people are going to follow content creators one way or another, whether they're transitioning out of the church or whether they're, moving on and turning towards other content creators for any other topic, right? There's a large population, a large group of people who are hungry for this information. And what's interesting too is, like Shannon, you and I experienced this when we went onto the live stream for recovering from religion, right? Like, Mormonism is super quirky and goofy and funny when you take a step back and you talk to people who know nothing about it. So and that's goes double for the history itself, right? So it's there's enough information here that's interesting to outsiders as well, that if it's packaged correctly, like, people are going to eat it up regardless of what their past is or their religious inklings are, right? So I'm all for more content creators, more eyes towards the history of the church, more people logging in and being like, huh, I heard somebody reference a salamander letter in a new documentary on Netflix. I want to look more into this. Who's this Hoffman character? Yes, more of that. Absolutely. I for one, I welcome it. Like, I have tried very much to not be like exclusive or go by a scarcity principle when it comes to audience. I very much am like, the more people listening, the more people creating, the better. The more rich and vibrant the community is.
Yeah, I agree. He also wants to know, since y'all won conference so closely, how do you think the church is adapting or will adapt to these changing winds? That's a
Uh,
tough one because they don't always adapt well.
yeah.
And
Huh.
Rusty does not like adapting to everybody. Hinckley was better at that than Rusty Nails, but he is a rusty nail. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't as that's a hard one. I mean,
it is.
I think they're going to go full on just I don't know. Did we actually see the audience in this last conference that they said was there?
I don't think they ever panned over to it. At least I don't recall seeing it. But my attention was divided across, three different, windows.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't
No,
watching every single second of it.
I wasn't either. I was rushing through it as fast as I could because of everything else. I had the wedding a few right before. But yeah, that's one. I wonder if they're going to go straight on digital before too long.
Mm.
Um but I don't know. That's a tough one, but I think one of the really big issues is they need to learn how to understand the youth if they want to keep the youth in, and they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, the youth of today are very different than the youth of my when I was a teenager, because the access to information is so vastly different. I mean, when I was a teenager, internet was science fiction. Cell phones were Star Trek, and all that. And so, Google, that was Star Trek, really. But we didn't have the access. We didn't have the ability to strike out on our own the way they can now. But also, and another big one is, we didn't celebrate differences then. And nowadays they do.
Hmm.
People who are different, like, say, look at the music community. Those who are able to work through a disability to do something are celebrated. They weren't when I was a young one. Um, things like that. We didn't celebrate it then. So nowadays, people reaching out, doing something different because of whatever disability they have or whatever, is something to be proud of, and it is marketable, that kind of thing now. And so I think that's one of the things they are going to have to understand if they are going to get anywhere, or they're going to keep losing the youth, which is going to kill off the church. Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't have them understand this.
The longer they don't, the better, I say. Now,
Right.
yeah, I totally agree, right? Like, they're at a point. I mean, like, this is not new. The church has always, like, lagged behind society a lot, and mostly that's just resulted in some bad PR, but largely the people staying members of the church, right? Like, Shannon, you remember, like, the changeover when black people could get to heaven,
Right.
right? And I mean, you knew people who left because of that change, but that was such a tiny fraction of the people, and it was a generation that were raised very much to obey the elders, whatever they say, that is the truth. Even though, of course, there was a small contingency of people who, this church is an apostasy. How dare they say that black people are equal with us delightsome people, right? So the church has always like lagged behind in anything and everything, and in many ways has held people back from advancing, has held society back from advancing. They like I view the last decade and a half as the internet and social media has grown exponentially as the turning point, right? Like
Right.
this is the the PNR, the point of no return. If they do not quickly adapt, improvise, and overcome with how fast things are changing right now, they're like lost on a trajectory of backsliding that they are not going to recover from in any meaningful way. And I would say because of the gentrification of the leadership that has just been ongoing since its Utah foundations, there is no recovery from that death spiral. But once again, that goes back to the question of like, what does the church look like? Is it really a church if there are no members, but they have a nest egg that they can survive as a corporate entity forever? And that's an interesting conversation. But if they're selling off chapels and temples are being demolished, then I say, hey, what kind of a church is that? Like, what kind of people are you hoping to have, and what size of a church? I think it's in many ways too far gone, and it's not looking any better with Oaks or with Bednar, with any of the upcomers.
No, it's not. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch. That's for sure. Okay, Will also asked, do y'all have opinions on spirituality without religion? Not necessarily metaphysical stuff, just how important is it that people get the psychological warm fuzzies for meaning in their life? Those same warm fuzzies that religion tries to control. Yeah. I do think those are really important. I mean, but then again, it's not necessarily religion that provides it. I mean, I get it from listening to Gustav Mahler and to listening to Terminator 2, the music, or stuff like that. I'll get it from different movies. I mean, get that little frisson of feeling. I just being able to recognize that it's not the spirit doing it to me makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a brief answer to that, but of course, as y'all on the live stream can see, Jeff just joined us, and if you are a Patreon subscriber, which I know that at least a few of y'all in the chat are, you should have a link in your Patreon inbox that will allow you to join if you would like to join us as well. So hey, Jeff, good to see you, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome. It's really Hey, cheers to reaching Patreon goals and spending an evening with friends.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Spirituality after Mormonism. Spirituality takes a lot of different phrases and a lot of different meanings. It can mean whatever the hell you want, right? Like, I mean, I get the skin orgasms with listening to good death metal, right? And right. Before the pandemic, took Annie to her first metal concert, and she was like, devil horns in it up. She was super into it, right? And through high school and my 1 year of college, that was my form of worship, was going to metal concerts. So sense of spirituality, there are many outlets and many places to find that. And religion doesn't, as much as it will fight me on this, religion doesn't have the monopoly on spirituality. It's just spirituality is a really loaded term, and atheists don't have a whole lot of terminology to work with those feelings other than spirituality. So yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense. So Dave and Shay want to know, what movies or TV shows evoke parallels to the so-called church? And yes, I am using the phrase in the general authority curse word context. And I mean, there's a hell of a lot to do in so many different ways. Like there's, of course, Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, Dune, the entire Matrix series, just anything with someone trying to control the thoughts and actions of others. Stepford Wives. I mean, if you want to get really severe, ones like The Master, which that's a fascinating movie, just period. I mean, hell, when you get Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman in there, and Philip Seymour Hoffman is playing a cult leader, I mean, hello. Yeah. But anyway, or The Truman Show, Boy Erased is another, though I actually haven't seen Boy Erased. I read the book, and that one, Whew, yeah, that brought up a lot of memories of some of the anti-gay stuff from the Mormons back in the 80s when I was at BYU and dating a guy who was gay so that BYU would take their eyes off of him and not stick him in one of their programs. Yeah, but anyway, a lot of those. I mean, you can see parallels in a lot of movies really because of that need to control other people. There's Saruman himself and Sauron are both. I mean, you could really with the Lord of the Rings make Rusty Nails Saruman and have a little fun with that one. But anyway,
No, he's Gollum.
No, that's Oaks.
That's Oaks for sure. For sure.
But yeah, I mean, with Dune, the Bene Gesserit, you've got, I could go on for hours with that. What do you think, Bryce?
Wow. I should have thought about this question before because now I'm on the spot. I really am struggling to think any movies that I've even seen recently that hold parallels to it. This is a movie that I told Shannon that she needs to watch, and this is not so much the church although there are parallels to it, but this is what I see as an interesting parallel is to Joseph Smith himself is the movie Uncut Gems. And Shannon, we got to talk about this. Have you watched it yet?
No, I haven't yet.
It's so good. I was downright surprised at how good it is. So it really chronicles the devolution into madness of somebody who has no ability to resolve their problems and just continues to amp things up and continues to chase the next greatest and best and awesome thing. And in many ways, I see it as a parallel to Joseph Smith, but also with the church much larger, with their inability to look back and retrospect on their own experience and their own multiple times falling on their face with gigantic fuck ups that they've made and failing to look forward and say, how are we about to make a gigantic fuck up? I think that holds a very interesting parallel to the church as an organization. So I have to put some thought into it. Maybe we have to do that for like a listener mail or something like that after I can put some time and thought into it.
Well, we also have that final episode of the year where it's going to be all media.
Yeah, that's what's coming up in a couple of weeks. But Jeff, did you want to chime in on movie parallels?
I was going to ask another question if that's okay.
Oh yeah, you can do that.
But I could talk for a long time about movie parallels too. X-Men is all about cult leaders. Mandy gave me a panic attack because of the cult. I mean, there's just so many. Like I felt like once I had my shelf break, every single thing, book, movie, everything, I just saw it in a completely new light. So that's my big answer is everything is different afterwards, whether it has a parallel or not. It's just there's a new lens to see things through, and it's right. Beautiful. So my question for y'all. Do you have any tattoos and will you show them to us? Because I've been in a mode where I'm planning out a bunch of tattoos and I'm curious.
I have one tattoo. That's a tattoo that I only ever show in private company. And one that
this is private enough.
Is not.
It's private enough
for broadcast all over YouTube. Yeah, the show is, this channel isn't monetized, but you never know what the future holds. I don't want that to be a strict on there. Shannon,
I don't have one yet. I have
just
plans
describe
for
it, Bryce.
One. It is actually it is a essentially it's a back tattoo and it is a tree, and what it essentially represents is my testimony. And the tree has it's huge and dead, and there are eyes growing through all of the bark, and there's a crescent moon in the background, and it's just dead and withered and just looks fucked up and metal as shit. Because like I felt like when I was in the church, I had a strong testimony. It was that the seed that I planted that grew, and I felt like it flourished. And became something, that I truly believed in and deeply identified with. And then learning so much about the church that wasn't true, and learning that this testimony was actually something that's just like a mutated, disgusting, it's an intellectual tumor that I have to try and excise from my psyche. I wasn't able to do it. I had to instead kill it. And the vestiges, the scars, still remain to this day. So that tree is not going to go anywhere. It's not decayed. It's not growing anymore, but it is still very much sitting there dead and maybe petrified, intellectually petrified. So that's my entire back.
That's beautiful. I love that idea.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
The one I have planned is going to go right here, right where the cap of my garments would have been if I was still wearing them, and it would be say, "There, but for the grace of free thought, go I." That will be mine. I'm hoping to do that this year, but we'll see. We shall see. And in fact, let's see. There was David Shea also had another question for Bryce. Are you working on a book, and when are you going back to the Naked Mormonism podcast? Because they are looking forward to Brigham Young years, because they will be brutal.
Book progress is being made on the book, slow and steady. But the Naked Mormonism will be returning at some point, probably in the distant future, because the Utah years, I cannot leave them untouched. I mean, come on. Holy shit, the Utah years, right? So those times will be coming in the future. As it stands right now, I have to get the book out, have to get it finished and published. And then we'll go through the schism crisis. I call it the schism grenade, all of the different factions, and spend a certain amount of time with each of those different factions. And then I kind of see it as like season 3 will be Utah.
Cool.
Distant future goals,
Yeah, huge future goals. Yeah. Jeff had sent in several questions, one of which was the tattoos, but he also asked, what movies should I watch in preparations for Shannon's reference dropping? And I'm like, all the movies. That's really the only
Yeah, you didn't answer, so I didn't watch any movies. So
all the movies. I mean, really, the only way you're really going to get anywhere with that is if you have a bug implanted in my head to follow my thought processes as we're going. Because half the time these movie references I drop just happen out of the blue. It's like the one a few episodes ago when Bryce was saying something from Miracle of Forgiveness and about you don't try, you have to do. And I was like, do or do not. There is no try, which is the most famous quote from Yoda. And of course I had to say it. I mean, but that's really what happens is it just sort of randomly happens here and there. Sometimes I'll plan them if I'm writing out my notes and something keys me. Sometimes I don't plan it. I mean, there was probably about half of them aren't planned. But yeah, you pretty much just have to have a bug inside my head. Sorry.
Now, speaking of planets, can I ask one of my other questions?
Yes.
So the whole getting a planet thing, I always felt like that was, like when I was a believer, I always felt like that was thinking too small, because I felt like anything that we could see was something that God created, and we can see a fuck ton of stuff. So I felt like if we were going to become like God, we would get our whole universe. And then I learning about the King Follett discourse, I was sadly disappointed to see how weak and not powerful Joseph Smith's idea of God was compared to my own. I'm curious if any of you ever really got into those deep philosophical, as a believer, trying to make some weird doctrine work, like the hallway doctrine type stuff. Make it work with science or anything like that. I don't know. It's a really specific, weird question, but hopefully it'll create a discussion.
I never did, because I was female and all of that's under the purview of the priesthood. And so to me, I was like, I wouldn't have any choice in the fucking thing. So it was never something I ever actually thought about. I mean, the biggest thing that ever made my brain kind of break was trying to figure out where God put the universe, if he created the universe and the universe is unending and everything else, and there's all these other gods creating universes, then where are all these universes going if they cover everything? So that's about as far as it went.
Oddly enough, I have come to appreciate the implications of Mormon theology now that I understand it far more than I ever did when I was in the church, right? So like as a teenager in the church, like you don't know a whole lot about the world, and being raised in the church, you don't know a lot about other theologies and other philosophies and other ways to look at the world and existence. But having left that and come out of that, I have come to appreciate what Joseph Smith was trying to implant and was trying to create, and it is a system of eternal progression and the creation of worlds without end. And for me, somebody who enjoys learning as much as I do, and in some respects consider learning to be the height of existence, it's one of the greatest pursuits that we can spend our time on, a very limited mortal time on. The thought or the possibility that I can spend eternity progressing and learning and creating different worlds is extremely appealing to me. Now, I was never taught it in that way in the church, and I don't know. I mean, that's not exactly distinctly canonical, but it does follow from the implications of what's built into the King Follett Discourse and the Book of Abraham, and I think that is fascinating to me. I would love to be able to have an eternity of experiences, an eternity of truly learning and adapting and seeing what mysteries the universe holds. I have no reason to believe that is ever the case, but I do appreciate that system of thought and that desire and that drive far more now that I've left the church. And I might say, had I learned about it that way when I was a teenager, the drive for wanting the church to be true may have kept me in longer, may have caused me to go on a mission. But because I didn't understand it in simple terms, I didn't understand the deeper implications of what is possible within Mormon theology. It just didn't hold a whole lot of interest to me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you put it that way, because for me, I feel like I did kind of have that eternal progression as a core part of my belief, and I did stay in longer potentially because of that. And I think that's part of what prompted the question.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not alone in that. I mean, it sounds great. I mean, Shannon, an eternity of watching not only every movie that's ever been made, but every movie that could ever possibly be conceived of and created, and every parallel universe iteration of that. Come on, that's a baller afterlife.
Fun. It's like one of the Beauty and the Beast books that Robin McKinley wrote. The second one, Rose Daughter, has this I think that was
Interdimensional Cable.
Well, it had a library of books that were all the books that ever were published, ever, before their time period and after, and all this stuff. And so she's in there reading all these different books, ones that hadn't even been published yet, all that kind of stuff. That would be, yeah. There we go. Movies, books, get those. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You had another question on there, Jeff, that you submitted.
I had a couple. I feel bad. I feel like I'm monopolizing.
No, we got some other people.
Oh, okay. Will Bryce upgrade his camera and lighting setup?
It's not.
I think we know the answer to that
right now, right? It's not that bad. I got the Logitech posted up at least. I just need some other lights. But maybe
I'll give you some pointers.
Patreon goal.
Yeah, there we go.
You
also
and then
asked,
the last real question is do you have any Mormon dish, food, whatever that you still enjoy, and do you ever bring it to your social circles outside of your current ex-Mormon social groups?
Funeral potatoes. Except I don't make them. I let somebody else make them. I don't like to cook. But yeah, that's such a quintessentially Utah Mormon thing. I mean, there's the joke of green jello with carrots, which I've actually never seen anywhere ever. But funeral potatoes, that's the one.
For sure.
Which, if anybody's watching this and has no fucking clue what we're talking about, you have potatoes that have been, I'm trying to remember how my mom made them. She would boil them a little bit where they're firm enough that she could grate them and mix them with like cream of mushroom soup and I don't know what else, and put cheese on the top and bake it up. It was kind of a casserole thing. I don't know I can't remember all the details because I didn't cook and I didn't want to because of all the work it looked like. But I really liked eating them.
Yeah. Jeff in the chat, fry sauce, dude. Oh.
Yeah,
I miss
that's
good fry
a Utah
sauce.
thing.
That's a Utah thing.
Yeah,
it really is.
I had never even encountered it growing up in the church because I did not grow up in Utah.
Right. It is a Utah thing. I was at a conference about 6 years ago. Some friends were here they were from like Kentucky and Tennessee and all this stuff. And so it was up at the University of Utah. And we were in the cafeteria eating. And I told them all, I was like, you need to get fry sauce. And they're like, what the hell is it? I said, just get it. Get it for your fries. Not the ketchup, get the fry sauce. And then when they tried it, I was like, this is Utah. You want to try something, Utah? This is it.
Try the fry sauce.
And then I told them how to make it.
Yeah. For me, it's the Sunday roast beef and potatoes and corn, right? Like that's. I mean, it's not just a Mormon meal, but it's like Sunday you get home from church, especially fast Sunday. Nothing tasted better than that roast. Oh. And yeah, yep. I mean, of course, that was the first meal that I made for my now wife, right? Like one of our earliest dates, I was like, I'll make you dinner. And it's a super easy, delicious dinner. And she thought it was awesome. And then we got married. So that's all it takes is, one good meal. Yeah. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot of like Mormon culinary, right? I miss fry sauce. I really miss that, but that's about it.
Yeah. Exmo Candle Company asked, any stories of doing super cringe-worthy Mormon things from your believing days? And I was like, oh God, yes. Oh my God. I was the most judgmental prig as a missionary. I really was. I was going through my journal and I'm just like, I can't believe I did that. It's like, for example, one of my best friends, she got pregnant and got married while I was out. And I didn't even know anything about the marriage coming up until I got an announcement from one of them saying, oh yeah, she just got married and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait, what? And so I wrote in going, what happened? What happened? And she says, oh yeah, well, she was pregnant and they had to get married or they get kicked out of school because they were at BYU and blah, 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 blah. And I was so angry about it. And I sent this horrible judgmental piece of shit letter to the friend who got married, telling her what a horrible person she was for getting pregnant and for sleeping around and all this shit. And I look back on that and I'm just like, oh God, Shannon. Or things like some of my companions that were struggling and how judgmental I got with them and telling them they needed to work harder and everything. And I don't know, some of them I wonder just by the description that I wrote down in my journal, what kind of things they were suffering from, not just things like depression, which I was, but I'm like, there's had to have been some other stuff going on with them that I probably made it worse. And it is cringeworthy and is something I have to keep telling myself, Shannon, you know better now. If you had it to do over again, you would not have even gone out, but you would not do that if you had it to do over again. And so, yeah, those are some of the worst things for me.
I'm trying to think of like specific incidents that I've had, and I'm really struggling with this. I'm sure if I think about it hard enough, I'll be able to come up with specific incidents. But most commonly, it would be like mansplaining shit. that is so hard not to do. And I think what's really, really helped me with that, of course, was like beginning to co-host My Book of Mormon with Marie, and then, you know, bringing Shannon on here. I've been able to temper that a little bit, but damn, that is hard. And I recognize only after the fact, especially when I'm in the editing room, when I'm mansplaining something and I'm like, no, fuck, no, and I'm like, I should delete it, but it's what I said. It's a thing. It's on there, and if I deny that I did that, and then I deny that, you know, I made a mistake, and then I just need to be better moving forward. And like the cringe teaches me to stop doing that as much. And every time I hit a cringe point in the editing room, I punch myself and I say, I'm gonna stop. I gotta stop doing it sometime. So, you know, and, you know, behind the scenes, Shannon and I had a bit of like getting to know each other, getting over that, and helping me and her to communicate and build that chemistry a bit better, because I have an insatiable urge to be the know-it-all in the room. I don't know if anybody has been able to identify that. And it's really hard to be that and not constantly mansplain stuff. That's mine. It's an ongoing shit that I'm dealing with and struggling with. So,
of course, that's also hard because it's also a cultural thing, not just Mormon.
Yep.
Yeah. I like what Tyler said in the chat. I hope you don't mind that I read this, Tyler. He says, I wonder if these experiences are made more cringy by being Mormon, or if they would have just been a different but equally cringy experience if you weren't Mormon at the time. And that's a good question, actually, because I don't know. I mean, I know now I wouldn't have reacted that way to somebody getting pregnant outside of wedlock, or even having sex outside of wedlock. But I also wouldn't have. The one I would have been angry at is the church for making them feel like they had to get married. And so I think that's a big one on that one. But yeah, there's so many of that. I don't know. Yeah.
Will M, do you mind reading on air what you just put in the YouTube chat? Your cringe moment?
Gosh. Yeah, it was so stupid. I had broken up with her before I left on my mission, and I fully expected her to get married while I was on my mission. And my ex-girlfriend wrote me a letter saying that she like met a boy during the from the like family home evening things that they set up with the young single adults, and she told me that she got engaged, and I was like bitter, but I didn't want to, like, I don't know, for some reason I was like, whatever, it doesn't matter. I was 20 or 19 or whatever, and I just wrote back and I was like, well, I hope you start having babies soon so that we can have more missionaries in the field. And I just like, it was so jeez. I wake up like has kept me up during some nights, like, because the point is like I can't go approach her. I mean, obviously she's still living her life, and I want to apologize, but it's like I'm conflicted because I'm like, that's a cringe moment that I just have to let be cringe and not open it up, because she probably forgot it, you know, or maybe she didn't, and it was stupid. But anyways.
You hope she did, right?
Yeah, I pray that she forgot
it. That's my thing. I'm like, I really hope my friend tossed the letter. Oh God, yeah. She wrote back something like, well, that was hard to hear, Shannon, but I know you love me and stuff. And I'm like, oh God, okay. I really hate what I did then. Oh shit. But yeah. So yeah, there's so many things, and I've so many years. One of the worst that I hate that I even did was, and this was like what, 8 years ago, I think 8 or 9 years ago, is I helped do a lesson in Relief Society about how all the adult women needed to dress better, because the bishopric was having a hard time looking at them showing off their bodies in church. So, you know, things like no long necklaces and loose clothing and stuff to the neck and all that shit. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, God. Anyway, yeah. Oh, so glad I'm not Mormon anymore. Okay. I think we all need to remember what Julie says here in the chat is that ex-Mormon merch has a shirt that says, "Sorry for what I said when I was Mormon." That we should all get.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's how I feel. Oh, good. Yes. Though we were asked also in the chat when I was talking about funeral potatoes, would we have a funeral at an LDS church? I don't want mine to happen there, though I know that I'm not going to have much choice in the matter. But if my husband were to die before me, I would probably be like, we're not even holding a funeral. We're going to go somewhere else. We're going to bury his ashes under a tree and be done. But I would rather it wasn't done there. I would rather it wasn't anything at all Mormon related. I want to be cremated, and I want, if people have a memorial, just go have a party. Go watch a movie or something. That would be good. How about
Lord
you,
of the
Bryce?
Rings extended cut.
Yeah. All of them. Do the Hobbit too.
The whole
just
thing.
Spend 2 days with that. Yeah.
Frankly, like, I'm not gonna care because I'm gonna be dead. There's not gonna be anything of me to care. But for me, as I am right now, I like the thought. I don't know. Almost nothing reviles me more than the final place that my body is seen and remembered is in the minds of my loved ones inside of a church.
Dressed in temple clothes.
Dressed in temple with the apron and all. That is.
I'll go back to church to do Bryce's temple ordinances.
I didn't know he was a baker.
So for me personally now, living Bryce, I would not like that at all. But I'm like you, Shannon. I don't want people to be like crying at my funeral. I want them to like have a party and enjoy themselves. And no happiness is allowed at a Mormon church. So why would I want people to suffer there when they can go to a bar and have a party?
Well, that's my thing too, is Mormon funerals now, you're not supposed to be talking about the person all the time. You're supposed to talk about the Savior and the atonement and pretend like it's sacrament meeting. And I'm like, my favorite kind of funerals are always the ones where they sit there and they tell stories of the person. And it's like, I had an uncle, great uncle, really, Uncle Spud. Everybody called him Spud. He'd been called that his whole life because his dad looked at him when he was born. Is like, he looks like a little wrinkly Spud. And he grew up in Nephi, Utah, that kind of thing. But at his funeral, it went on for 2.5 hours. And all that happened is kids and nieces and nephews and stuff got up and told story after story after story of Uncle Spud. And we were laughing and crying through most of it because it was awesome. And I was like, that is the kind of funeral I like attending, is ones where everybody, lift their glass or whatever and tell stories about the person, because that's the way to memorialize them.
Yeah.
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 Oof, God.
One exception, if I would consent to having my funeral be in a Mormon church only if Eli Bosnick were conducting it.
Yeah.
Or even better, if Eli Bosnick and Dave Chappelle did a dramatic reenactment of the 1978 policy being canonized.
There we go.
That's my funeral right there. I'll take that.
Okay. Oh dear. Oh God, I'm just imagining it. Holy shit. Okay. All right. Okay, here's another question from RG. I love this one. A non-abducting alien inadvertently destroys your lawn when she lands for directions to the nearest Starbucks. You invite her in for a cup of your best house blend, and conversation naturally turns to Joseph Smith. In a gesture of landscape compensation, Bulex suddenly gets an idea. What if I were to chevron or Sean Rev, a clip from that guy's life? She telepathizes. My supplementary energy rations are strong enough this cycle to get you about 1 Earth hour of his activities with a level 2 transcript of his thought patterns. I can only capture a single uninterrupted sequence. And unfortunately, the brain transcript sometimes comes out in Klugrilian or less often in French. But let me try. It's the least I can do. You do have a Clax viewer, I hope. No matter, I think there's a manual on the ship somewhere to convert clips to primitive digital video. So, Bryce, what single 1 hour segment of Joseph Smith's life captured accurately by our alien friend would you like to see and share with the world?
What a ride of a question. My God, thank you for taking us on that journey. Damn, 1 hour of his life with a level 2 somewhat accurate transcript of his thought patterns at the time. Because that's even more important. That's really tough, right? Because like the possibilities are, 39 years worth of infinite.
Because there's so many things with him. I mean, things like that hour when Emma found him fucking what's her name, Fanny Alger in the barn, or the first time he tried mushrooms and that whatever revelation he got during that, something like that, having Mormons see him behaving badly.
I mean, those would be so fun. Okay, so there was a hearing in Nauvoo, and this was when William Law was about to be excommunicated from the church. And William Law had received information that the Danites were out hunting him, and he was able to essentially evade what he thought was an assassination attempt on his life. And Joseph Smith held a trial in his municipal court in Nauvoo that he had to basically prove to the public that Danites weren't a thing, that he had no secret pact with the Nauvoo police force, and that no such thing ever would have happened. And in this dramatic fashion, he had all of the police force stand up and say, he asked, do I have a secret pact with you, or do you know of any secret pact? And they're all playing dumb. No, of course not. And I would love to be sitting in that courtroom and watching each and every face of all of those Nauvoo legionnaires / police officers / Danites just bold-faced lying, and seeing William Law's face, his reaction, and to see like Joseph Smith's body language as he's conducting himself through all of this one trial in, I believe it's like February 1844 that this happened. And to be able to read his thought patterns during that, and how he was devising and what he was thinking he was going to say in order to make the grandest scene of this, that I think that 1 hour clip would reveal so much about the personality of him that any of the other answers are like, yeah, and he was in the Sacred Grove experience, yeah, Carthage jail incident, or when he was in Liberty jail and was released, or when he had planned his escape attempt by bribing the guards with barrels of whiskey, right? Like each of those are like fun 1 hour clips, but I think that clip of him inside the courtroom with that grand display would just tell me so much about him and about the atmosphere of Nauvoo and the criminal empire that it was. That's my answer.
That'd be fun.
Shannon, do you have an answer to that or any thoughts?
I already gave mine.
Oh, okay. Go Fanny Alger. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yep.
Of course, for me, I'm looking at it, I'm like, or when Emma was like, you guys got to clean up after yourself. I'm tired of cleaning up all of your shit off the floor. And so he gets all spiteful and does his, well, then you can't have coffee anymore, kind of thing. No more hot drinks with the women while we're in there drinking. I don't see, and that's my thing. As I tend to want to see all of these where him behaving badly, especially towards women, because he was such an asshole.
Yeah.
That time when they're trying to convince Nancy Rigdon to let him tup her as well, kind of thing. Yeah. Any of those.
Any of them. Yeah, there are so many to choose from. Like, It doesn't just have to be Fanny. Like Martha Brotherton.
It can be any of them. Yeah. When he goes after these little 14-year-old girls. Yeah. Will, by the way, brought up in the chat on YouTube saying, "What's this with green jello?" That is such the urban legend of Utah that is strong enough that in the 2000 Olympics, or 2001 or whatever the fuck it was, that was held here, the Winter Olympics here, and they did all those little commemorative pins. There was actually a green jello one. But it's
I need one so bad. I need it for my quirky Mormon collection.
There you go. People are like the green jello with carrot shavings. I may have had it once, but I mean, jello is kind of a thing with Mormons, I guess. Or at least it was when I was growing up. Not so much anymore. I don't think people really do it so much anymore. But then again, I think Mormons moved away from it because everybody's making fun of them for it.
It's available on Amazon as a collectible like new for $75.
$75?
Yeah.
No. Oh my, that is insane. Wow. All right, so I'm not the first.
Bryce, just give me your address. I'll send it to you. Just text me your new address. I'll send it to you. I'm not kidding. I will just send it to you.
We'll chat after.
No, just text it to me. Just do it now. While Shannon's talking, just be like, and I'll make it. I'll make it happen. It's amazing. It's even better than I pictured.
Oh, this is amazing. I got to see this now.
Yep.
Now, really briefly, I hate to put one of our guests here on the spot, but I see that we have a certain Rick in the chat with us, or in the conversation, and I personally, I would love to hear his response to the previous question. 1 hour of Joseph Smith's life that you not only could watch, but you have a transcript of his internal monologue and thoughts at the time. What hour would that be? And by way of introduction, listeners, if you heard the episode we did on Mormon Parallels, this is Rick Grunder. This is the author of that massive tome of amazing information of Mormon Parallels. And we're lucky to be joined by him. So, yeah, Rick, what do you think?
First of all, Shannon, you made my evening by reading that overblown question. I heard your voice as I was writing it. I said, I hope Shannon's the one who reads that, because I knew you'd do it justice. I heard Shannon's voice in the background saying every word.
When I saw that one, I was going to put a note in our notes saying, Bryce, I get to read this one. Oh, good. You just made my day. All right.
I thought Bryce's answer was brilliant. I think mine is a little more prosaic. I think I'd like to watch him for 1 hour dictating the Book of Mormon for an uninterrupted hour and just watch what happens. Maybe in one of those parts where he says, or rather I should say, just see what's going on and maybe hear what's in his mind at the time. And I guess we all have different axes to grind. But for me, I'd especially like to see him dictating the Dream of the Iron Rod, because I really get into that subject. But I guess that's my answer.
There you go.
Excellent answer. And excellent question as well. Thank you.
It is. It really is. Jeff put another question in the chat. Do you want to see it, Jeff, or do you want me to?
Sure. So the Smith entheogen theory is amazing. And your work on it and the folks you've been working with is just phenomenal. What's the current status for publication to a Mormon history-specific publication? And is there anything that we as listeners could do, even if it's just like menial stuff, to help?
So as it presently stands, the book manuscript focuses heavily on the subject matter, and that's going to be kind of the central thesis of it, is examining early Mormon history and the Joseph Smith timeline through that entheogenic lens. So that's going to be kind of like my hat into the field of Mormon studies, or my entry into the field. and I have elected to write the book for a lay audience, which means that the lovely folks of the Mormon history community will probably not like it because they will think it's not in depth enough, or it's it's too controversial, or it's too I don't know, provocative, or whatever the case is, because the thesis behind it is, Joseph Smith was drugging the early Mormons with psychedelics. That's obviously going to be a controversial thing with such a conservative circle of scholars. So that's the status of my own personal research. I have an article that we submitted to John Whitmer that I'm working with Brian Kassenbrock, and presenting on the infusion of psychedelics and the lens through which to view First Nephi, and notably the dreamscape that occurs in the first book of Nephi, that it include the first vision story, or include the visionary elements that are synonymous and similar to the Joseph Smith Senior visions. That was rejected from its initial submission, and we are currently going through the final editing processes before a second submission, in hopes that it will be published in John Whitmer Historical Association, which that will be my first entry into publishing within the Mormon specific field. Obviously, our big paper was published through the Journal of Psychedelic Studies, which, there isn't a whole lot of overlap between the Mormon historian audience and the people who are researching psychedelics, so that paper didn't receive a whole lot of exposure within that community, and that's fine. Like, I have no problems with that. So publishing in one of the Mormon specific journals is the next step, and that paper has been sitting at various stages of completion now for like the past year, about a year and a half almost. So hopefully that'll be ready to submit for a second proposal really soon, and then probably more journal publications before the book itself is actually published, because just writing one article and then publishing a book on Mormon history is a sure way to get you laughed out of every one of the conferences. So as for what listeners can do, excellent question. Nothing. This is my project. This is a me thing, and this is Bryce just needs to have a higher output of writing and research, and it's going at the pace that it's going.
We can be your we can hold pom poms for you.
Hey, right? Yeah, you're tuning in, you're hanging out, and asking for when the book's on its way. Like,
there's something.
All of that is encouragement, and it means a lot. It does go a long way in helping me be like, yeah, all right. Come on, keep working, Bryce.
Because if you weren't doing it, someone would have to.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm glad that someone is, and I'm glad that someone is you.
Yeah. In fact, what you need to hear right now is what's in the chat in the YouTube, where JG Gunner says, "Bryce, I love you, man. Don't mean to be off topic or disrespectful to the other presenters, but Naked Mormonism is not only an impressive body of work, but got me through the hardest time of my life." So, Bryce, this is what people say about you all the time, is that. Yes.
That means a lot. Thank you very much, JG. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that gets us through the questions. There's been some thrown up in the YouTube chat, like many true believers I know are anti-vax. Did Rusty alienate many of his own followers with his ask to get vaccinated? Yes. There are people that left the church over that, which I was like, it's great you left the church, but that's a really stupid reason for leaving. And it's like those who left the church because the church let Black people be people. But yeah, he says, when I sing Follow the Prophet to them, they get very upset. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't like the rewriting of it about getting vaccinated. Maybe that's,
Very interesting. Yeah, they had to. And what's interesting too is teasing apart that signal from the noise of everybody who just is not going to return from the pandemic, or hasn't and never will return because of the pandemic, and realizing that it's pretty great to take Sundays off, right? Wondering what percentage of those people are not returning because of the vaccine, and Rusty being a heart surgeon, a medical professional his whole life, and having some sort of idea of how vaccines work and shit, telling people to get vaccinated. Shit, it's going to be really interesting. I don't know. Like, I want to know what their numbers actually look like, but I honestly don't think there is any way to tease out the signal from all of that noise, because we know that the numbers took a massive hit throughout the past year and a half, 2 years now. And as the world hopefully eventually moves past this and the issue somehow de-escalates from being politicized, which seems highly unlikely to ever happen. I don't know what membership numbers are going to look like, but a lot of people left because of that. Right decision for the wrong reasons. Yep. It's still the right decision, I guess.
Oh, Tyler pointed out, and I'm glad he did because I wasn't looking at it, but he had posted a few more questions earlier. This is my favorite. Do you ever have disagreements on podcast topics, especially that come up during recording? What do you do when that happens? I don't think we have yet, have we?
Haven't any what? Sorry, I was reading a thing.
Disagreements on a podcast topic. Have we had one? I think I brought up something and you're like, well, I don't think we'll go very far with that, but if you really want to, we can.
Yeah.
But
I think that was it, right? Like, I can't think of anything that we have never been like fought on air and then cut it or anything, right? Like,
right.
I don't think we've ever had a thing where we're like staunchly disagreed, and especially we're unable to resolve it. Shannon, you're easygoing. I'm pretty easygoing, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't want to fight with you with anything because you're right about everything that I've talked to you about so far.
Oh my God. Well, and I mean, some of the things that we've disagreed on have been really more of, this has been your experience, but my experience has been this, which has been really good because we're presenting it as, me as a woman, this has been my experience. You as a man, that was yours.
Yeah.
And we keep being able to prove over and over and over that the experience for men and the experience for women in the church has a very vast canyon between them. And so with the way men and women are treated. Yeah. Well, no, it's like the question that Jeff had earlier about having our own worlds. I had seriously never thought about it because I knew that if it ever happened, I wouldn't be doing a fucking thing. I'd just be standing there going, yay, honey, you're doing a wonderful job,
Those are really nice plants you did there. I like those.
Lovely. I'm so glad you got to create 5,000 more varieties of apples. Okay. My husband loves apple trees. I don't think he'll be happy until he's got 45 different varieties of apple trees here on our 1/4 acre lot. Seriously. He buys more and I'm like, great, go for it. The yard is yours to do whatever you want with. I don't touch any of it. So anyway, and they're yummy too. He's got a really good peach out there too. But anyway, Northwest, which I'd never had before. It was delicious. I even ate the skin and I don't usually. Anyway, yes.
I wanted to Alex Appleseed. That is awesome.
Yay! That is a great name.
To the question, one thing that we have said on air, at least I know that I've said it a couple of times, and this reveals somewhere where we had a potential for a disagreement, is one of us saying, "I've never thought about it that way." Right. And like that's an opportunity where we could have had a disagreement, but instead the other person was open-minded and flexible enough to say, oh, well, that's something I had never experienced. That's something I had never considered. And then we, at that point, that evolves the conversation to the next step, or we continue to articulate our points to a point that we're able to at least see where each other is coming from. And, and then like, that's just basic communication that friends can have. Right. So.
I mean, 20 years ago, I would not respond to that way. It would have been my way or the highway. And so it's like what I was saying before, my cringe-worthy moments on my mission where, nope, you're our mission president is a wonderful person. I don't care what you say, in the midst of him abusing me. So yeah. No, that's the other thing is I guess I grew up some. So yeah, a little bit. Good thing to do when you're in your 50s. Okay. How long does each podcast take for research and then for recording? Well, you patrons get to see how long the recordings are.
And we
Because
even
you
cut
get pretty
stuff out
much
of that.
everything, almost
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. The research, I think it kind of depends.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was doing the Naked Communist, I was spending, for each episode where I was talking about it, probably 10 to 12 hours looking into the stuff, whether it was reading it or looking into other things. I mean, I was getting all sorts of stuff.
It was super obvious you're spending a lot of time doing the research, and that was very, very much appreciated.
I was so glad that people did, because I was like, okay, I'm diving down rabbit holes here. I gotta make myself stop. And I mean, that was happening on this last episode. We did that topic. I was like, Bryce, can we record tomorrow instead? And then the next day, can we do it now tomorrow instead?
Yeah.
Pushing it all the way to the last minute just to get done with what I was trying to do on that one. But yeah, those ones they do. I know, Bryce, with some of the deep dives you spend a lot of time, don't you?
Yeah, it totally depends, and you can tell the amount of hours that I put on it based on the number of pages that my notes are, and
Yes.
so for every episode of Miracle of Forgiveness, it's anywhere from 5 to 12 pages long, and that is represented by essentially 3 to 4 days prior to record day of me sitting down with the book the entire time, writing out thoughts, reading as I go, making notes in the margins of the book, and just getting, having real heart-to-hearts with old Spence Kimball on that book. And whereas with the deep dives, those are kind of different because basically every deep dive we do, I have some level of familiarity with it prior to saying this is going to be the main topic, because it's research oftentimes that I had done or I had come upon, months, years ago or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. You know what? I'm going to go pick up that thread that I left hanging and see, how far does it pull? What comes out when I continue to pull on this? And sometimes, and that varies tremendously as well. Sometimes that's essentially me looking through my old show notes and just resurrecting a segment and just retooling it, rewording, reskinning it, and making it a standalone segment. A couple episodes ago, the funny Mormon stories, right? That's research I had done forever ago, and I just ported it over to the Glassbox notes. The Mormon Money series, holy shit, that was weeks straight of research. And reading, and I had D. Michael Quinn's book to lean on heavily for that. So it varies depending on the subject material, and the Mormon Money was just such a foreign concept because I don't understand economics very well, and money as a subject, as a standalone subject. So trying to get into the economics of a very shadowy organization just kind of compounded those learning blocks. Needless to say, it varies from episode to episode, but it's fun every time. I enjoy doing it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mormon Money was definitely one of the highlights of the podcast to date. The other thing I want to mention is that going through Miracle of Forgiveness so far, I never read it, but every single thing is stuff that has affected me
For sure.
growing up in the church.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to cry because of how awful it is.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. We've had some
All
rough
of us.
ones. We've had some rough ones where we have to pause in the middle of the recording going, okay, do you need to go get yourself back together? Both of us have had those. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was proud of us on this last one that we ended up making everybody laugh at the end. I was really proud of us. Didn't expect that one. Yeah. Tyler also asked, has leaving the church affected political leanings or vice versa? And I mean, I was full on Republican growing up. And I think Obama was the first time I voted for a Democrat. And that was an interesting one. At least for president. Here in Utah, I voted for Bill Orton, who was a Democrat, and was really angry with how he was defeated the next time, because It was after Clinton had done that really big land grab. And I mean, the monument here, and Utahns are so stupid thinking that anybody else could have stopped him, but that Bill Arden could have stopped him, but there was nothing he could have done. He got concessions on it, but that's about as far as it went. But that's why he lost the next election, and we got this piece of shit in. And that's when I started to notice just how big of a piece of shit a lot of the Republicans are. So, but it was leaving the church. I mean, because I did grow up hearing you can't be a good Mormon and be a Democrat, that all that kind of shit. And, people, but that's in a lot of the evangelical Christians in the United States, is they say the same thing. You can't be a good Christian and be a Democrat. And so being able to step away from it and look at it clearly and see, okay, I mostly vote Democrat on things, but I can look at the issues and look at the behavior of the guy or woman rather than which side of the aisle they're on. But yeah. What about you, Bryce?
I've always been more of a progressive-minded person. I remember having a conversation with a buddy of mine in high school. This is the first time that I had ever thought about the conversation or had been presented with forced to analyze it. A friend of mine was talking abortion with another friend of mine, and he was like, why would I care if somebody gets an abortion? It doesn't affect me. And I just like, yeah, sure, that's reasonable. That was the first time that I was like, oh, wait, this is a hot button topic. And I remember being, 12, 13, 14 years old and just beginning to learn that Fox News is what it is, and not understanding or having even the concepts of objectivity in journalism and the difference between a news entertainment and a journalism, in my mind, not having those be separate, distinct concepts. And disliking Fox as soon as I started watching a little bit of Stephen Colbert. So the first opportunity that I had to vote, I didn't vote, and that would have been for Obama's second term. I didn't think that it was that important. I wasn't old enough to vote for his first term, and since then I've my entire voting age I have been a progressive, and I have become more and more liberal the more that I learn about politics.
Yeah, they are messy. He asked, what do you feel is the purpose of the podcast, and who do you feel like you make it for? I feel like we make it for those in and out of Mormonism, but it's for Nevermos. I suspect it's a little harder, but it also is good because at least there's a few friends I have. You hear me talk about my Serbian friend, and I have another one in Poland that were Nevermos, and they learn a lot from us about what Mormonism is like, and that's been fascinating for them. I know I hear from them quite a bit, but yeah, that's a lot of who I think we're mainly focusing for. Yeah.
We try and tailor the show to be accessible to people who have no affiliation with the church, never know anything about it. And so Shannon, when we start a segment and it's like, so what is the atonement in Mormonism or whatever, right. We try and do build the groundwork for what this means and why it's relevant in Mormonism before we kind of launch into the segment. Now for former Mormons who are listening, it's like, why this is 101 stuff. Why are you talking about it this way? It's like, that part of the show isn't for you. The rest of the show is. We're working to educate a largely former Mormon audience, and we do want to make sure that it is accessible to people who have no attachment to the church, no history with it as well. So we try and make it for everybody, but obviously just with the limitations of the subject matter, it's mostly former Mormons who are going to listen to a show that looks at headlines inside and outside of Mormonism.
Right. And I mean, in a lot of ways, we're just trying to pull up the rock and show what's underneath it, so that, that like what happened with both of us, really, and getting us out of the church is seeing what is really going on underneath the rocks. What kind of bugs are under there? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. How do you talk to acquaintances in the church about your issues with the church, if at all? And do you try educating or take the attitude of accepting and waiting for them to ask? That's the one I do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard one, because I mean, a lot of my family are all TBMs and are not interested in hearing what I have to say, but I also know everything they're going to say, and it's like, I don't want to argue with them. And there's times I feel like, am I being a hypocrite or not?
For sure. I try and let the conversations come to me if they ever do, which means that they almost never do. But I do have opportunities for laying in some of those groundworks. But of course, I have a few people in my life who I still have contact with who are members. And I try and continue to build the rapport with them, such that if they ever find themselves in a place that they have questions, they would feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me about it. Right. Here's an example. It's not Mormon specific, but it is politics, and oftentimes these things are tightly intertwined for who the fuck knows what reasons. But a friend of mine who's Trump supporting conservative in the military, he and I virtually video game. We're friends from high school, right? And while we were gaming this last session, he's like, do you know what this Rittenhouse thing is about? And because I listened to OA, I responded with, instead of saying, yeah, this guy's a murderer, he should die in jail, and, the leftist talking points, I responded with, I unfortunately know way more about it than I want to know. What do you want to know about it? At which point he wanted to know some of the basics. So I said, well, this was a person who attended a protest, came with an armed assault rifle, who was not of age to own this thing, and then shot 3 protesters, killing 2 of them. And because this is centered around the George Floyd protests, and because this is a young white kid, frankly, who carried an assault rifle and then approached police officers while still holding that at a jogging pace and wasn't shot, it has kind of become a centerpiece of controversy about what the issues of racism and race in the U.S. and the justice system treating different people equally or unequally based on their skin color. And, that's kind of a summary of my answer to it. And I didn't want him to say, oh, you're a leftist, and not listen to me. I wanted him to understand the basics and, introduce a couple of points of controversy or a couple of points of discussion, such that if he wanted to know more, then he might think about coming to me and saying, hey, so what do you think about that? At which point I'd love to sit down and chat with him and, sit, over a hot cocoa next to the fire and chat about it or whatever,
Yeah.
But those are rare. Those are very rare.
They are rare. It's such a difficult thing, especially when you have really strong ties. I mean, family are hardest ones. And I don't with any of the TBM family members. Yeah. If they bring something up, I might say something or I might not, depending on how they presented what they did. And it's more acquaintances I can. The best, though, was one day when a friend of mine from high school that I have contact with over Facebook, I think she saw that I was on the recovering from religion thing. And she's like, wait, tell me what's the deal with this? And I told her, and then I find out, oh, she was atheist too. She just avoided talking about it and all that kind of stuff. And then I got her story about leaving Mormonism, which was wonderful, because then it was a little bit more of a connection there. But it's a tough thing. I have likened it a little bit to coming out of the closet, even though it's not even close to that level. But in some ways, it's similar because Mormonism permeates every cell in your fucking body. And so, that kind of thing is sort of the same thing, is excising that from yourself is, it's a rough one. I don't know. it's a topic I tend to avoid, except when I'm on a microphone and not looking at anybody.
It's weird how a microphone is easier than a Facebook thread, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's weird.
Oh my, yeah. I mean, when somebody, a family relationship, contacted me after my first episode on here, and I get this message with a link to it, and he says, I only read the Book of Mormon twice. And I was like, oh my God, holy shit. And it just suddenly hit me that somebody in my family was listening to me talk about all this shit. And I was just literally shaking. And I'm like, so, what do you think? We've had better conversations since then, but it just, that's one of those things that's happened. Holy shit.
Jeff, did you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I've got another question, if that's okay, to kind of change gears.
Yeah.
What do you both know about the Fellowship of the Remnant, which is the Denver Snuffer group? And do you think it would be beneficial to kind of encourage TBMs to head in that direction, because it seems to be much more healthy than the mainstream large downtown Salt Lake City Rusty Nelson Church?
I don't know much about them.
Episode topic.
Yeah. Let me just ask by saying, in what ways do you feel like it is less damaging than the mainstream church?
So so part of the reason this is on my mind, I was aware of them for a long time, and I even when I was still a believing member, I read some of their material, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But I just heard the RFM interview with Denver Snuffer that went up this last week, and Denver Snuffer is very, very clear about tithing doesn't go to me, it goes to your group, and then your group puts it to where it's needed. And he's like, I don't want this to become a power money grab for anyone that's involved in this. And if they're doing that, they're doing it wrong. So he's trying to kind of cut that major flaw off at the head. And it's much more complicated than that. The priesthood is not. So like in the Salt Lake Church, the priesthood is not accountable to anyone, but in the Remnant, they are accountable to the women in the congregation. So the women get to say, okay, you don't have your priesthood anymore because you're a sack of shit. And so he's building in these checks and balances into the loose, less formal and more decentralized version of how to find truth. And it just sounds much more like a healthy mode of operation for someone who really believes in God and Christ and this whole idea of a restoration, but without all the baggage. So I'm curious what your take would be. And if you haven't done a deep dive on it, that's fine. I wasn't sure because I've never heard you all talk about it, which is why I thought about asking you.
Right.
Yeah. I have some complicated thoughts on Denver Snuffer. And a very good friend of mine very briefly considered herself a member of the Snuffer movement, and I feel like I got a very interesting window into the community based on what she shared with me. And that's my way of introducing my response, which is I believe that the people that Snuffer seeks his followers, that he claims are not his followers but are super duper his followers, are so fucking Mormon that they can't shed the baggage. That of course they are looking for the new and improved male leadership that isn't actually 90. But he's not actually the leader of the Snuffer movement. It's just a movement that is colloquially referred to as the Snuffer movement after him. But he's not actually the prophet because everybody gets their own revelations. But he happens to be writing all of the books that all of the followers read, but he's totally not their leader. and saying that you are building into the church a system of checks and balances, that the women have a say, a vote of who is able to retain the priesthood and the leadership privileges of the church, is really awesome sounding. But when you're pulling from a population of women who, Shannon, did you feel comfortable contradicting a priesthood leader 10 years ago?
I still don't. It's that ingrained in me. Yeah.
Right? So the people who are joining the snuffer movement, they're already yes people. They're already looking to follow a spiritual leader. And the snuffer movement is certainly not free from the radical elements that infect and pervade the Mormon culture. There's a lot of very, very extremists who are members of Snuffer's movement, even though Snuffer himself seems to be somewhat progressive. Right. But, you know, it's just like any religious movement. It's going to attract the most extreme people. And Snuffer is going to go away eventually. But the people who follow him aren't going to go away. At which point they're going to be looking for the next leader. And when you create a power vacuum, I mean, like at multiple points throughout the LDS church's history, throughout Joseph Smith's history, throughout the Utah church, the Brighamite church, throughout the movements in Short Creek, we see what happens when a power vacuum, is created, when a leader is removed or excommunicated or murdered or dies of old age or sickness or whatever the case is. Power vacuums are created to be filled by a demagogue. So the Snuffers right now may be this wishy-washy progressive Mormon that doesn't actually have a prophet, and everybody is their own, has their own revelations, and that women have the most power in this church than they have in almost all denominations, and it's more progressive than the mainstream church. But you're creating a system that is ripe for usurpation to become even more radical than the mainstream church. I see Denver Snuffers movement as nothing but more dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
I mean, that is the hard thing, is you're leaving a high control thing. I mean, watching the movie Stargate, that when it's put out, that was like late, somewhere in the 90s, that one with Kurt Russell and all them. The thing at the end, when the individual they thought of as God is taken away, it's like, oh, yay, everything's wonderful. But the thing I always got from that is, what was going to happen next? They were used to being slaves to this God. What were they going, they were going to have to put somebody else in that position, because that's what they were used to. They didn't know anything else. They'd lived that way for however many years, decades, hundreds of years, whatever. And so it was so ingrained into them to be slaves that they were going to have something else. And I think of that with Mormonism, is leaving it. I think those who leave it and completely excise it, everything from themselves first, it's like trying to get off of drugs. Are you going to slide out, like go into the Denver Snuffer movement and then into something else? Or are you going to just go cold turkey? Which one is going to do better? I think in some ways that's what you're dealing with. But I think those who just do it cold turkey and realize that's what they're doing, and they're going to eliminate all of it, get back, put enough distance between themselves and it to see it clearly, do a better job of recovering from it. Because it's like what we talked about in the last episode, where Bryce was bringing up things like those who grew up, you have one sip of alcohol, you're going to become an alcoholic, and they leave the church and they become alcoholics because they don't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to drinking alcohol. Same kind of thing. But if you're able to see it as, I'm going cold turkey and I'm going to remove myself far enough, then I think you have a better chance of getting yourself away and then deciding, do I want to join another religion? Am I going to be able to see that religion clearly? And that's the key.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I just see some TBMs where I don't think cold turkey is an option for them. They need methadone for a while before they can finally quit. Yeah, so that's kind of what prompted my brainstorm. Like, well, maybe going through the Remnant for a while could be a stepping stone, because it gives them permission to think about things more than than the Salt Lake Church. And the Salt Lake Church seems to be much more threatened by Denver Snuffer and similar movements than the ex-Mormon, just cold turkey community. And that to me is interesting that they're more threatened by that, even though it's a much, much smaller by numbers group.
Well, it's also because, I mean, like what we were saying earlier in this about the ex-Mormon movement is the Mormon church is able to influence the ex-Mormon community very well, like they did with McKenna Denson. They achieved exactly what they wanted from that. They cut her legs out from under her and made her a laughing stock, and she shouldn't have been. And so, you know, but they did it, and they made it happen exactly the way they wanted to. So they're not threatened by the ex-Mormon community. They will be threatened by Denver Snuffer because that movement is the methadone. And so that's one that will actually help people. But I think if it's seen as something temporary, I think it would work. But it's like what Bryce said, you know, what's going to happen when he's gone, when Denver Snuffer's gone, what'll happen then?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also the Denver Snuffer is a figurehead that the church can create a villain out of. Same with McKenna Denson, and you know, same with Noonday Noah. Same with there are, you know, some individuals within the ex-Mormon community, and I'll even loop John DeLynn in there. They are the figureheads that the church is able to make an enemy out of. But it's much harder for the church to make an enemy out of an idea or a lack of an idea like atheism. Especially when, you know, atheism already suffers from a lot of social stigma that is, in my opinion, is changing. There is a massive social shift away from atheism being a swear word. And I think that's super awesome, and I think that's something that's sneaking up on the church that it doesn't realize. But false prophets, right? Like that shit has been baked into the Bible, right? Like that's been there since day one of Christianity and of many, many religions, to beware of false prophets. So when you have that charge, you have that scripture, and you have a figurehead that actually represents it, you know, it's a lot easier to make an enemy out of that person and that movement.
Right. Yeah.
So do we have any more questions? Have we exhausted our entire list?
Tyler gave us one more. Is there any topic or social issue you have wanted to discuss on the podcast, but it was just too far off the Mormonism topic to justify? And if so, what was it? I brought up something a couple months ago. I'm trying to remember what it was now. But we were both like, there's no Mormonism angle to that, though. Mm-hmm. What was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I'm struggling to remember it.
I know.
It does happen from time to time that, you know, like even on our back channel, we'll kind of discuss back and forth, like, you know, should we talk about this, or is this something that's interesting enough? And one of us will kind of veto it, or the other will be like, so what's the Mormon angle? Like, why are we covering it when other people can recover it better, or it's more topical to other shows? So that's an ongoing conversation, but man, I can't think of any topics off the top of my head, of course.
Right. And we also don't want to be duplicating others too. I mean, that's one thing.
We try really hard not to do that.
Right. Because we're doing the stuff that slips through the cracks. So, you know, if we're going to copy what other podcasters do, then we haven't done anything of what we said we're doing. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
I will say sometimes the tagline at the beginning where you don't leave us with the feeling that the world is on fire doesn't always pan out throughout the episode.
No, it doesn't. Though we try with the happy news segment at the end. That's the one that's supposed to be that.
Yes, I do appreciate that. It's hard to do that when the world is kind of actually on fire.
Yeah.
True.
Oh, and I love this from Tyler. Are there any questions you want to answer that you hope we ask?
You'll have to tune into the next quarterly Q&A for the answer to that question.
For my praise to the Hobbit, maybe that was it. Yeah.
There we go. Yep. All right, Shannon, any closing thoughts before we call it a night?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered pretty much everything.
I think so too. But of course, we do have a huge thanks to give to all of our patrons. Y'all are the bomb. A number of y'all, well, I mean, anyone who joined us in the video here, obviously you're patrons, but I think there are some viewers as well who joined us who may or may not be patrons, but y'all got us to the goal that we were able to do the first ever quarterly Q&A, and we're excited to do that next time around. And I'm stoked. I'm happy that we were able to make this happen, and it's thanks to our listeners and our patrons, and y'all are the bomb. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, we love you.
Yeah.
And Bryce, text me your address. We'll get you a pin. I've had people message me. We found some cheaper ones, maybe. We'll get it worked out. You still have the same phone number, right?
Network activates as little,
you've got the
little
same
dots
801
on
number,
satellite
right?
images like begin to ignite all over the globe. You find a warehouse of 3,000 of things. Yeah,
we only need one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you so much for your questions. This was really a lot of fun. And well, Shannon and I, we got an episode coming up a record coming up this Thursday. So let's get to writing that now.
I know. I need to start that now. So sure. I'm not in a rabbit hole on Thursday going, wait, can we do it tomorrow instead?
Awesome. Well, take care, YouTube. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.